Welcome to New Pastures Ministry Story Time. Over these last few weeks, especially in January, we've been looking at the word dig, deeper into God in our devotionals. We've had a little short clip on some photographic evidence of that angels do exist, I believe. And that's why I asked the question with a question mark, what do you think? What do you see in those clouds? And as promised in February, we are now going to look at story time. The purpose for this is twofold. Firstly, it's to recognize that we have a creative point within us. God has given us that creativity to make stories, to paint pictures, etc., to put words to page. And this is my attempt to tell a story in a way that is funny, hopefully, that is from another point of view, but also has a real meaning, and hopefully that comes through the story. The second point is to encourage you to also be creative. Maybe you've wanted to paint that picture, maybe you've wanted to put pen words to a page, maybe you wanted to write that poem or that pending book that's in your mind, but you've not known how to do it. All I would just say to you and encourage you is go for it and see what happens. God gives us that inspiration, that encouragement, and that creativity that belongs to Him. He puts it in us. And I never thought I would be able to write a book. I never thought I would be able to write a children's story in this way. And I hope you like it. Please subscribe to the channel. Please leave comments, whether it's constructive or encouraging. You know, we want to know that it's encouraging to you, that through this story we will be able to find points of truth that we can relate to. The story is called The Hungry Lions. The story is called The Hungry Lions. And this is a story of Daniel and the lions, but from the lion's point of view. And I'd like to read from the Babylonian Gazette, if I may, as to paint the picture of what's going on in Babylon at this present moment. The Babylonian Gazette reads this: the king's lions in uproar about their treatment, conditions, and food supplies. And this is the report. King's Palace lions in uproar over mistreatment due to the lack of crime within the palace and kingdom. The king's lions have been put on a vegetable diet as meat is too expensive and criminals are becoming more rare due to the stringent laws recently passed with King Darius's command. Officials within the palace say that the situation is temporary but has reached critical boiling point. The king's lions will not stop grumbling and are often heard even late at night making loud roaring and growling noises. It is reported that King Darius is looking at possible options and is taking counsel from his chief advisors so that the lions can be fed meat. One observer commented and said, "All we want is the lions to be happy and for all of us to have a good night's sleep." Munch, munch, crunch, crunch. These are a tasty bunch. We are the lions and we live as a pride. This is our story. Come look inside. We're not asking for very much, just for that gentle touch. No more vegetables, so please feed us meat, so our tummies will not grumble or rumble, but will soon become comfortable. We are the lions and we live in a cave. We love to walk and stalk and crawl and misbehave. Hungry, waiting to be fed. The lid is lifted. What can be said? Young tasty leaders that will make a tasty meal. Best with bread and gravy. There's no big deal. They wriggle and moan, but there's nowhere to hide. For we are the lions and we live as a pride. We are hungry, famished and feeling quite grey. So please don't harass us as we haven't eaten all day. Vegetables are good for you, all are agreed, but meat is much better, and this is our feed. So please let us tell you with this letter, feed us meat and we will get better. As the lions remembered back to King Nebuchadnezzar, they made this statement. King Neb made a golden statue so many feet high, the people were made to bow, worship and sing his name, so they would cry. As we heard their songs, their celebration chants, we looked and watched and did our own lion two-step dance. Our stomachs ached and rumbled and grumbled, and with a belch and a hiccup and a sneeze so loud, which took us by surprise, we began to laugh and stumble. We were feeling quite faint, even quite feverish. We knew something was wrong, for we missed our favourite hot dish. Then we crept nearer to our hole to hear the crowd, for they had fallen silent as the king decreed death to the three, which made him so proud. The oven was opened and the fire was lit. The crowds had their way as the celebrations became a big hit. The fuel was stoked and poked as the smoke bellowed and choked. Then, with a heave and a push, the three were thrown in. There was a singe and a cry from those who got too close to the heat. Yet the three became four and walked around unharmed as they did their heavenly beat. And that's when it all went wrong. For King Neb decided to proclaim a decree. His kingdom were to worship the all-powerful God who had saved the three. And so we sat and reminisced. Those were the days when we would eat meat. Our song and our dance was always upbeat. But now it is with sad hearts we have to say, it's about vegetables, yet we still dream of eating meat some sunny day. Our story begins with Daniel, the man of bravery, accused of something quite scarily. He was taught to pray 3 times a day. But King Darius decreed this was not allowed, and with his life he would pray. As he was lowered into our den, we heard those who accused him shouting, "So where is your God then?" He looked bright, young and bright and lean, and seemed a very brave man. We looked him over, licking our lips and admiring his tan. He did not cower or cry out or try to run away, so we surrounded him and encouraged him to stay. We walked and stalked and kept and crept, all the while keeping an eye on our new suspect. Gently, excitedly and nervously we approached, for this was far better than when we chased that cockroach. With sharpened nails and bushy brushed tails, we groomed our manes as we set out to play our lion games. We opened our mouths and licked our lips, and with delicate paw-like fingertips, we washed our eyes and powdered our noses and cleaned our ears. As Daniel came nearer, we expected his eyes to be full of fearful tears. We sharpened our teeth as we thought about meat and approached Daniel, in whom we were about to greet. We thumped our paws and sang our song. We grew louder and faster with every growing throng. We swished and swayed, and our beat grew louder, then burst into song with a chorus which made us prouder. It's a very simple song and catchy too, so sing along and hum the tune with us too. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, here at last is our tasty lunch. Ingredients for Lion's Supreme Stew. knobbly kneecaps, tender spare ribs and shoulder blades too, plenty to go around and easy to chew. Eye sockets, ball joints, elbows and knuckles too. With salt and pepper to flavour, they make a tasty side order or lion supreme stew. Tenderized toenails, deep-fried battered fingered soldiers, all wrapped in lettuce and tomatoes. Excited at the smell and sitting down to such a feast, we dance around the kitchen, crossing our legs and tapping our toes. Mix and stir and bring to the boil all that we love, this will not spoil. With a shake and a stir, add a bit of garnish too. All has the makings for our favourite dish, which might include you. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, we are so looking forward to Daniel being our lunch. Our tummies began to rumble and tremble. Our fur shivered and quivered at the thought of a meaty pie crumble. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, these are a tasty bunch. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, we're looking forward to Daniel being our tasty brunch. Then a strange thing occurred, for Daniel fell down on his knees and began to pray, "Oh God, please." He asked God to protect and provide for a way in which our mouths be closed and in him he would hide. With courage and confidence he looked at us and smiled and continued to pray to his God in some grand style. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, oh how we wish Daniel would be our tasty lunch. In a circle we had created, patiently, hopefully, longingly we waited. We even crouched ever so near as Daniel continued his prayer we wanted to hear. We got closer and closer with a lion's stare. We decided to push the weakest in front as part of a dare. But something happened to us that day. For Daniel did not move, but in God he trusted and continued to pray. Our mouths were closed tight and our tongues fixed firm. Our minds became confused, befuddled, betwixt, as we looked at each other in turn. We tried to growl and hiss and roar, but all we could do was wave our right paw. We tried to bite, but just couldn't break free. The angel of the Lord held us firmly, you see. We couldn't rip, claw, chew, or spit. This was no fun, for all we could do was just sit. We looked and watched, but Daniel did not move. He continued to bow his head and whispered his prayers as his faith grew and grew. We sat and we waited and waited, but Daniel was not giving up or moving as we had anticipated. He prayed and prayed, then rested and rested, till eventually we gave up all hope as our patience had finally been tested. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch. Our stomachs continue to rumble. No wonder, no meat, we have to grumble. Daniel was a very special man. Yes, very lean, clean, and handsome with that beautiful tan. God protected and provided a way out for him as the entrance was lifted and King Darius poked his head in with a look that was so grim, crying out in his loudest voice, "Daniel, Daniel, did your God save you last night?" To Darius' surprise, he heard Daniel's voice rise, upbeat and remarkably bright. "Yes, your majesty, my God saved me, my life from this awful fright. So please lift me up from this sorry sight." The rope was lowered and Daniel held on. With a heave and a ho, they pulled him up and then Daniel was gone. We sat together and contemplated if Daniel used prayer to get what he wanted. We too could pray as Daniel prayed. "Oh God, please give us meat this very day." We sat and we waited and waited. The next day our prayers were answered as we had anticipated. The cover was lifted and the ropes were lowered as the accusers of Daniel was lowered and lowered. They hit the ground with a bump and a clump and cried and hid and ran for their lives as we began to stomp. We circled and surrounded and roared with laughter and came upon them and pounded them to their slaughter. With much glee in our hearts, we made stew and a few tarts. We sang and roared and expressed our joy. No more vegetables, but meat, oh boy! Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, these are a tasty bunch. The accusers were lowered into our cave, all screaming and crying and not terribly brave. With cries and howls, don't eat us please. We're ready, more speed, less haste. Shh. We began to seize. Oh, what peace, oh, what joy, oh, what ease. We are the lions, so easily pleased. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, these are a tasty bunch. The moral of the story is always to pray, for you can trust in God, yes, even today. If you don't want to end up in our stew, then pray like Daniel, we did, for we knew. God is a God who can be trusted. Call on him, rely on him now, or you're busted. Daniel trusted in a God who is strong to help provide and protect him from what was very wrong. He was accused and found guilty of something he did not do, but God knew he was innocent and still had a work for him to do. Like Daniel, God will rescue and deliver you. For God's word never fails, but is always true. We can all learn from Daniel's faith that we have a great big God who loves us and keeps us safe. The truth of our song should be sung every day. We don't like people who devote themselves to pray. God will protect, guide and comfort you in time of need. So strengthen your faith, for God answers in great speed. We are the lions and we live in a cave. When you visit us, you must be very brave. Now, can you see our complaints? It is our reputations we do not want to taint. We are fierce and strong and love to greet. We don't want vegetables, but only meat. So if you read our story, which of course is true, all we ask is for lion supreme meaty stew. Please remember as you pray today, we are the lions and all we ask is for you to stay. Come close, come near, we insist. Come close and rub our noses and blow us a kiss. For our diet is having our favourite stew, but this can only happen if it involves you. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, these are a tasty bunch. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, you could be our next lunch. And this is the end of our munchy crunchy song. We know Daniel's God is very strong. We are stealthy and strong and we live as a pride. You can do no better than have God on your side. Even though we are very scary, there's no need to fear. God's promises are forever and he's always near. Munch, munch, crunch, crunch, we're happy now we've had our lunch. I hope you enjoyed that. The story of the hungry lions can be found in the Bible and is based on the story of Daniel in the book of Daniel chapter 6. Daniel, a young Hebrew man, learned to trust God as his advisor and confidant from a very early age and is taken into captivity by the Babylonian army. It is in the king's court that Daniel's faith is recognized, strengthened, developed and tested. Whether interpreting a dream, dealing with a state issue, decree, or standing up for what he believes and trusts in, which eventually brings him face to face with the palace lions. Daniel's faith is unwavering. The story of Daniel is an intriguing and endearing account of faith in God. The backdrop is that Daniel and his 3 friends have been taken into captivity and are under the tutelage of the foreign king's advisors. The book of Daniel is about having a resolute faith in God, standing against the foreign gods of that day and living out their trust and dependency upon God, not as a protest or an act of rebellion, but as a testimony. The outcome is that God rewards those who walk in faith, obedience and trust. Daniel is completely trusting and reliant on God, which causes him to walk in obedience, willingly and completely, no matter what the circumstance or situations he is about to face. Intriguing because we see God actively involved in a person's life. We see how those who would try to harm and disapprove Daniel's beliefs are naive concerning God's power. Endearing because we see God's compassionate and protective love and concern for Daniel. This is what epitomizes this relationship, and therefore making it as real as any other human relating to human. Nowhere in the book of Daniel do we see this more than in the account of Daniel facing the ferocious lions. My hope for you in reading this fun account is to see that even lions who love meat are no match for God's protection over those he loves and cares for. We have a God in whom we can trust and believe in completely. For nothing is impossible for our God. And I don't want you to end up in their lion supreme stew. God bless you. Have a wonderful day.